Hello, how are you today? I hope you are well and you have a fantastic day. Are you ready to listen to another audiobook about Warhammer 40,000 lore? I bet you are. Without further ado, let's get to the article about orcs. Quote, "Ere we go, ere we go, ere we go." End of quote from a common orc chant heard during a Greenskin wag. The Orks, also called Greenskins, are a savage, warlike, green-skinned race of humanoids who are spread all across the Milky Way Galaxy. They share many features with Warhammer Fantasy Orcs, and were initially called Space Orcs to distinguish them. They are seen by their enemies, pretty much everyone else in the universe, as savage, warlike, and crude, but they are the most successful species in the whole galaxy, outnumbering possibly every other intelligent race, even mankind, with the very plausible exception of the Tyranids. Greenskins are one of the most dangerous alien races to plague the galaxy. Numerous beyond belief and driven always to fight and conquer, the Orks threaten every single intelligent species of the galaxy. Orks are possibly the most warlike aliens in the 41st millennium, and their number is beyond counting. Amid constant, seething tides of war and bloodshed, burgeoning Ork stellar empires rise and fall. Mercifully, most are short-lived, soon destroying themselves in a maelstrom of violence and internecine conflict, but should the Orks ever truly unify, they would crush all opposition. The Orks' unquenchable thirst for battle has always proved the downfall. Historically, the Ork tribes have spent much of the time fighting amongst themselves, waging brutal wars with only the strongest surviving. On occasion, an Ork leader will emerge who is mighty enough to defeat his rivals and unite the warring tribes. His success draws other tribes to him, and soon a great wag is underway, partly a migration, partly a holy war that can exterminate the populations of entire star systems. When the Orks are on the rampage, the galaxy trembles, and in these dark days of the end time, there are more wags rising than ever before recorded. History. Quote, "Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the Ork is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic?" End of quote from rogue trader Ullanor. Prehistory. The Orks are a biologically engineered species, created more than 60 million Terran years ago as a warrior race originally called the Krork by the long-vanished reptilian alien species known as the Old Ones, whom the Orks refer to as the Brain Boys. The ancient Krork were known to possess more advanced technology than that of the present Greenskin race, and to be on average larger, in some cases standing as tall as 12 meters. The Orks were created by the Brain Boys to fight the Necrons and the seething masters in the great interstellar conflict called the War in Heaven that shattered the galactic civilization of the Old Ones that existed prior to the rise of the Eldar. Orks are thus genetically engineered to be muscular, aggressive, and none too bright. The technology is maintained by a caste of odd boys who possess genetically implanted dispositions and technical knowledge that grant them an unusual skill with maintaining and developing the technology. However, this skill is an unconscious one preserved through genetic memories hardwired into the odd boys' DNA by the Brain Boys millions of standard years ago. Indeed, the Brain Boys were apparently able to encode information on how to build simple machinery into the genomes of all Orks. Thus Mech Boys requires very little training in their function within Ork culture, since they understand mechanical principles at a fully instinctive level. Orks lack individual psychic power, being denied such abilities by the Old Ones. However, they do have a sort of collaborative, collective psychic ability, meaning that if enough Orks believe something is true, then it will actually become so, brought into power by the Gestalt psychic ability. For example, Ork rockets painted yellow create bigger explosions, simply because the vast majority of Orks believe they do. This is also why much of the Orcs' seemingly ramshackle technology will do terrible damage in the hands of Orcs, but will cease to function when used by other races. Great Crusade. The Goro Hollowing. When the Emperor of Mankind revealed himself to humanity following the long night of the Age of Strife in the middle of the 30th millennium, he shaped war-torn terror into a single unified world for the first time in long millennia. Once he had conquered terror, he looked to taking his great crusade to the stars. Having created the foundations of the Imperium of Man, he launched his massive armies out into the galaxy, seeking to bring all of the human-settled space back under the control of a unified stellar empire. During these early conquests, many Imperial expeditionary fleets encountered the Greenskin menace, a violent Xenos species designated as the Orks by the early Imperium. Within the Terran Reach was an Orc empire that rivaled it, centered on Ullanor, and at its heart was the scrap world of Goro. The Orc tech caste, the Mech Boys, dominated the Orcs of Goro and had made the world their own. The dominant tech caste on Goro seemed to be fascinated by a form of plasma technology never encountered before or since. Capable of generating destructive yields of terrifying potency, these plasma weapons had done much to blunt the Great Crusade's advance across the Terran Reach. Emperor decreed that Goro must be destroyed. When a 1,000-strong fleet of warships dropped out of the warp above Goro, it was the Emperor himself who gave the order to begin the assault. Horus, Primarch of the vaunted Lunar Wolves Space Marine Legion, and ever the dutiful and favored son, stood at the Emperor's side and watched as tens of thousands of assault craft spread out from the fleet. The Lunar Wolves teleported into the scrap layers beneath the planet's surface, forced to hollow out Goro from within due to the planet's high resistance to orbital bombardment. In the vanguard was the Emperor, and by his side was Horus and a guard of black-armored just errant Terminators from the Lunar Wolves' First Company, as well as the golden-clad warriors of the Legionus Custodes. As the Space Marines attacked, the Orc resistance they faced was near overwhelming. The Orcs of Goro were huge and augmented with scavenged bionics. Some stood taller than dreadnoughts, and their weaponry burned through Astartes' power armor easily. At the height of the battle, the fury of the Orcs split the Emperor from his guards. Alone he slew hundreds of them until a blast from an Orc plasma weapon weakened his defenses and one of the Orc leaders seized him. The creature's strength was so great that it took hold of the Emperor and buckled his golden armor. As the creature's grasp closed to throttle the master of mankind, Horus stormed through the press of battle and cut the Orc's arms from its body with a single blow. Together father and son led the forces deeper into the vast sphere of scrap until they reached the center of Goro. The Emperor worked to collapse the self-sustaining plasma sphere that powered much of the world's scavenged Orc technology and that contained a warp-filled envelope so that Goro would implode into the warp. The Emperor proved successful, and without its power source, the scrap world collapsed in on itself. A hollow skin of rusted metal around an empty void was all that remained to mark the death of the great Orc Empire of Goro. The Ullanor Crusade. It was a vast imperial assault on the Orc Empire of the overlord Urlakaruk during the Great Crusade in the early years of the 31st millennium. The capital world of this empire and the site of the final assault lay in the Ullanor system of the Ullanor sector, which had long been under the dominion of Urlak-Uruk's Greenskin pocket empire. The crusade included the deployment of 100,000 Space Marines, 8 million Imperial Army troops, and thousands of Imperial starships and the support personnel. The Lunar Wolves spearheaded the assault into the heart of Urlak's fortress palace. During the height of the assault, Horus and a retinue of Lunar Wolves Terminators from the elite First Company came face to face with the massive Orc warlord and a retinue of 40 Orc nobs. Horus charged into the nobs, hacking them apart with his lightning claws until he finally faced the Orc overlord himself. Urlak was simply no match for the Primarch's skill and unnatural power. First crippling his enemy, Horus hefted Urlak's broken body out onto the roof of the Greenskins' palace and threw it screaming from the battlements to fall far below amongst the horde of orcs still assaulting the lower levels. Seeing their leader defeated sent a panic through the Greenskin forces, which started to fall back from the Terminators. But the fleeing mobs found they had nowhere to run, as the outer walls had been breached by the attacking lunar wolves, and the day turned into a slaughter. In the Overlord's chamber, Horus found every Orc and Terminator dead, apart from the gore-drenched first captain of the First Company, Ezekiel Abaddon, who was surrounded by crushed and broken Orc bodies. The Ullanor Crusade marked the high point of the Great Crusade's vast effort to reunite the scattered colony worlds of humanity. The Orks of Ullanor represented the largest concentration of Orcs ever defeated by the military forces of the Imperium of Man before the Third War for Armageddon began during the late 41st millennium. Recent events. The Orcs have been a threat since before the earliest days of the Imperium, but the close of the 41st millennium marks an unprecedented surge in Greenskin activity. The galaxy trembles as a great warg echoes through the stars and beyond. In the 344th year, Tuskar the Demon Killer, Great Boss Tuskar acquires a taste for fighting demons and makes straight for the Eye of Terror, a warg of like-minded lunatics gathering around him as he goes. Warg Tuskar proceeds to rampage across demon worlds beyond counting, before finally the Eye of Khorne, the blood god, turns upon them. Though overrun and slain by never-ending hordes of demons, Tuskar's followers are transported to Khorne's own realm, there to fight for all eternity, reborn with each blood-soaked dawn to make war against Khorne's greatest demonic generals for the Lord of Battle's amusement. In the 797th year Green Tide of Ultima, the Ultima Segmentum is punished by wave after wave of Greenskin uprisings and invasions. Numerous outlying worlds are overrun, and only the tireless efforts of Chapter Master Manius Kalgar and his Ultramarines prevent far greater destruction from occurring. In the 798th year Warg Big Scorcher. In the 815th year the War of Dukkha, War Boss Grog Ironteeth leads a mighty warg against the burgeoning Tau Empire, gathering up all the Dukkha he can to counter the firepower of his more advanced foes. In the 831st year Warg Gazbag. Gazbag, a speed freak warlord noted for his dogged determination if not his navigational skills, guides his warg toward a group of largely unprotected Eldar paradise worlds. The vengeful Eldar of Craftworld Bealtan descend upon the invaders with destructive fury, yet find the Orcs a numerous and deadly foe. Eventually, the Eldar are forced to withdraw, the flames of battle having reduced the Paradise World's once verdant plains and jungles to smoldering ruins, providing War Boss Gazbag with a new empire to rule over. In the 837th year Port Saw Kol Massacre. In the 844th year Danger Overlooked, on the world of Hephastein, rogue trader Maximilian Trusk discovers archaeotech weapons from the Dark Age of technology. Staving off attacks by the world's Greenskin tribes, Trusk prepares to transport his prize for his awaiting fleet. However, a strike force under Lord Inquisitor Shale appears in orbit, demanding Trusk surrender the prescribed archaeotech. When the rogue trader, who by now is staving off near constant attacks from an increasing number of Orcs, refuses, inquisitorial troops deploy to seize the weapons by force. As the fighting between the rogue trader's forces and inquisitorial stormtroopers escalates, more and more Orcs are drawn in, scavenging weapons and soon becoming a rampaging horde. Yet both human factions continue more or less to ignore the Greenskins, more interested in pursuing their own vendetta. After more than 3 solar months of warfare, Shale launches an all-out offensive against Trusk's fortified dig site, and even as the bitter rivals lock blades, the jungle rings to the deafening war cry of hundreds of thousands of Orcs. From every direction, a tide of Greenskins floods the compound, led by a vast stomper that smashes its way through the defensive perimeter and charges headlong into the fight. Both Imperial factions are utterly annihilated, and the weapons over which they fought so hard are cannibalized for scrap. In the 855th year Wargkruk, the noted Snakebites clan war boss Kruk Tief Splinter enslaves the entire population of his old stomping grounds, the binary system Corva. Forcing his captives to build him spacecraft with holds cavernous enough to accommodate his beloved mega menagerie, HRUK sets off for the core worlds of the Imperium. He conquers the 9 shrine worlds of Malasanct and uses the Basilica Imperator Majoris as a breeding pen for his famously incontinent Squigoths. In the 862nd year Ralefos overrun. The great libraries on the Imperial Archive world of Ralefos are overrun by a mighty Orc-led invasion. The Greenskins burn everything, obliterating untold millennia of collected lore in a single night. In the 886th year Hope's End, Earthcast engineers of the Taukishan Sept proudly reveal an immense new colony seeding Voidcraft. This monolithic spacefaring vessel is named in the Tau lexicon, Hope's Light. On its maiden voyage, and with over 300,000 Tau colonists and warriors on board, Hope's Light is boarded by the Orc fleet of Megaboss Morkrog and lost with all hands. For the next standard decade, the Kishan Sept faces brutal raids from Morkrog's vast new looted warship Tau Killer. In the 898th year the mighty Mangler's Battle Wagon Brigade, the mighty Mangler of Bork launches his warg from the head of a vast brigade of battle wagons. Each vehicle is incredibly well armored, and the ground shakes when his brigade is on the move. To the dismay of the Imperial armies sent to intercept him, the mighty Mangler lives up to his name. Warg Bork collapses the defenses of the Ghoul Stars and claims a great area of the galactic fringe. In the 907th year a growing threat segmentum commanders across the Imperium report an alarming upsurge in Orc activity. More Warg than ever before must be combated. In the 925th year Warg Grax. In the 928th year the Thrassos disaster, Warg Dregdaka plows headlong into the Adransi cluster, causing untold devastation. On the planet of Thrassos a combined force of space marines from the Iron Knights and Liberators chapters attempts to halt the Orc steamroller advance. A horde of Orcs, including Dregdaka himself, are lured onto a huge refinery platform before Tech Marines destroy all bridges linking the platform to the mainland. Space Marine kill teams then deploy across the hulking structure, tasked with slaughtering the trapped Greenskins and assassinating Dregdaka. Yet the Adeptus Astartes have woefully underestimated the foe, the Greenskins digging in and fighting back with unexpected tenacity. Though they kill thousands of Orcs, over 300 Space Marines are slain and the comrades are overwhelmed as yet more Orc vessels pour into the system. His trophy poles rattling with freshly harvested Space Marine helmets, Warlord Dregdaka's position is now unassailable. His Warg completely overruns the Adransi cluster within the year. In the 934th year Rise of the Weird Warg. In the 941st year, the Second War for Armageddon, Warlord Garzfal Thracker invades Armageddon at the head of a massive Orc Warg in what becomes known as the Second War for Armageddon. Only the vast military experience and leadership of Commissar Sebastian Yarrick prevent the world from falling to the Orcs within the first solar month of conflict. Space Marine reinforcements gradually turn the tide of the war and Garzfal retreats to the Golgotha sector to lick his wounds and plot his revenge. In the 971st year Warg Wazdaka. In the 976th year Warg Gorbag. In the 977th year, Warg Planet Smasher, Death Skull's clan Big Mech Fragradar Planet Smasher vows he will surpass all other Death Skulls by looting an entire world, jerry-rigging a combination of tractor beams, ram ships and city-sized rocket boosters to push the third moon of Torabrax out of its orbit directly onto a collision course with its parent world. The resultant catastrophe renders all life on the thriving Imperial Hive world extinct, fracturing continents, boiling the oceans off into space and burning away the world's atmosphere, finally reducing Torabrax to a drifting debris field. Satisfied with his work, Big Mech Planet Smasher takes his pick of the choicest of these asteroids, adding thrusters, force fields and ordnance arrays to turn them into a fleet of rocks with which to spread even more mayhem across the system. In the 978th year, the Lost Warg, the Orc warlord Grisguts, a noted kleptomaniac, launches his Warg into the Morlock system. Whilst using warp travel to reach the quarry, Grisguts and his warband unwittingly travel through time and emerge from the shifting chaos of the Immaterium shortly before they set off. Grisguts hunts down and kills his doppelganger, reasoning that this way he can have a spare of his favorite gun. The resultant confusion stops the Warg in its tracks. In the 978th year, the Worldbreaker bomb. In the 979th year, a new weapon, Nasdrag Ujiad Grub, a Bad Moon's warlord noted for his wealth and flair, bullies his mechs into performing ever more progressive and bizarre experiments. Despite some nasty setbacks, ranging from spontaneous combustion to sporadic gravity reversal, Nasdrag's mechs perfect the teleporter designs. The warlord barters his new technology with Garzfall Thraka in exchange for an alliance. In the 979th year, Grabork's big gun, Big Mech Grabork and his mob of mechs salvage the Space Hulk Perpetual Misery from the depths of the void. Acting on instinct, Grabork and his boys set about pulling it apart and putting it back together into a new configuration, linking up dozens of void ship reactors and cannibalizing hundreds of macro cannons to create a gargantuan shock attack gun. Eager to try out his new weapon, the Big Mech attacks the world of Fratan, raining petrified snotlings down upon the planet from orbit. However, when the snotlings run out, Grabork starts hurling orcs into the machine. Not liking the way things are going, one of Grabork's mechs turns the gun into reverse, sucking the entire world up into the perpetual misery. The resulting explosion obliterates the Space Hulk and the planet and creates an asteroid field 1 billion miles across. In the 979th year, Warg Dragfang. In the 980th year, the Riftwog, a new warp anomaly, blooms like a rancid flower in the Cantaric sector. Though the rift itself is small, the powerful emanations agitate indigenous Greenskin populations throughout the sector. Driven wild, they launch Warg after Warg until Cantaric is reduced to war-torn ruins. In the 981st year, the Great Titan Heist, the Forge world of Canto II is left badly weakened by a Tyranid splinter fleet, and the Blood Axe's war boss Mardrug sends a crack team of commandos and mech boys to steal the warlord Titan Wrath of Cassiope amidst the chaos of the planet's recovery. The commandos shoot their way on board the Titan, and their attendant mechs manage to jump-start its reactor. However, the Orks have no way of controlling the wrath of Cassiopei's indignant machine spirit. Disoriented and enraged, the Titan goes on a devastating rampage across the planet before overloading its own reactor. The Commando's mission is a failure, but the devastation caused to a vital Forge world is substantial, affecting supply to numerous Imperial war zones. In the 982nd year, who's Darbos? During fierce fighting on the Exodite world of Liritha, Boss Sag's truck takes personal offense at being outmaneuvered by the lightning-fast Wild Riders of Samhan. Enraged beyond words as his cowardly foes retreat into the webway, Zagstruck lights up his rocket pack and gives chase along with the hardcore of his most devoted storm boys. The portal closes behind Zagstruck, and our boss is next seen some 10 solar months later when he stalks into the encampment of war boss Golgrot. He slaughters a couple of dozen looters, and reclaims his stolen fighter bomber. No one has the guts to inquire as to Zagstruck's recent whereabouts, but all note the fresh batch of red and white Eldar helmets dangling from his belt. In the 982nd troublesome loot, freebooter Dakbad Farragut lays claim to a vast living vessel he finds drifting in the void. The Orc pirates harpoon the creature, dragging it back to the base on grade rusting chains. On the way, the bioship unleashes a horde of Tyranid creatures, gene stealers and gaunts crawling up the chains to get at the Orcs. Dakbad and his boys enjoy a lengthy game of target practice shooting the Tyranids off the chains using the cruise's deck guns, until the freebooter finally grows weary of the situation, unhooking the harpoons and leaving the bioship adrift on the edge of a densely populated Imperial star system. In the 985th year Shirik's folly, Archon Shirik of the Cabal of the Severed Hope seeks to turn the green hordes of Warhammer Fist against the Tau Empire colony of Corvosa. Using hit-and-run attacks, Shirik's fleet lures the much larger Orc force toward Corvosa, but in their arrogance they underestimate the Orcs completely. Using short-range teleporter drives, a number of Warlord Hammerfist's cruisers leapfrog the Dark Eldar, leaving them surrounded and cut off from escape into the webway. Archon Shirik's forces fight like devils to escape the tightening ring of Orc ships. However, their resistance comes to an end when Hammerfist and his Meganob retinue teleport on board Shirik's flagship and slice the Archon to shreds with their roaring killsaws. In the 986th year, Gesmengeist overrun by Orcs. In the 987th year, 100th Warg Ozdaka rampages through the Hellshrike systems, millions of Orcs led by the legendary Bad Moon boss of bosses Ozdaka. Such is the utter destruction wrought by the Warg, entire worlds being smashed to scrap and dragged off into the stars by the unstoppable Orcs, that the Adeptus Terra dispatches a Vindicare assassin to take out Ozdaka and his most powerful nobs. Brutally effective, the nameless assassin stalks the battlefields of Hellshrike, sniping Orcs from the shadows and taking a terrible toll on Ozdaka's bosses. In a fit of rage, the warboss offers 100th more than most Orcs can comprehend, for the head of the unseen killer. As word spreads of the bounty, even more Orcs flock to Ozdaka's banner and his warg swells until it is even larger than ever. However, the warboss does not live to enjoy the destruction he has wrought upon the Hellshrike sector, the assassin's final shot taking Ozdaka's head from his shoulders before the Imperial agent is overwhelmed by a mob of Bad Moons intent on claiming the immense prize. In the 989th year, Warg Snagrod, then Arch-Arsonist of Caradon, unites the Orc factions of the Loki sector. The nearby Imperial colony of Badlanding is destroyed despite a valiant defense at Krugerport. Intervention by the Crimson Fist's Space Marines ensures that Snagrod's next target is the Adeptus Astartes planet of Rin's world, where, after a titanic battle, the Crimson Fist's fortress monastery is atomized by a devastating explosion caused when one of the Citadel's own defense missiles is accidentally turned against it. The Orcs are eventually driven off-world by the arrival of an Imperial reclamation fleet 18 solar months later, but it is a hollow victory, for the once proud Crimson Fists are reduced to a fragment of their former glory. In the 989th year, Warg Blacktooth. In the 994th year, the March of Gork, a clanking mob of several hundred Gorkanauts sets out from the Empire of Bork, beginning a destructive rampage that will become known as the March of Gork. From one world to the next, the lumbering machines smash everything in their path, the mechs building more Gorkanauts from every vehicle they destroy until they're a nigh unstoppable tide of rusting metal. In the 995th year the siege of Dorvan's hold. In the 996th year the tide rises higher, the incidence of orc wargs reach epidemic levels across the Imperium in this year. The forces of the Adeptus Astartes and Imperial Guard, already under incredible pressure from a multitude of threats, find themselves stretched thinner still as they are forced to respond to one orc invasion after another. Many cannot be stopped, and countless human worlds are overrun by the swarming masses of belligerent Greenskins. In the 998th year, the Third War for Armageddon, after 5 decades of planning and preparation, Garzfall Thraka returns to the barely recovered Imperial world at the head of an even greater warg, plunging Armageddon into another vast and bloody war. Yet after months of grinding conflict, the world has not fallen. As the Imperium commits vast reinforcements to war zone Armageddon, countless waves of orcs flood to meet them, and the war becomes a contest of grinding attrition with no end in sight. In the 990th part of the 998th year, a greater purpose, the battle for Armageddon, is at its height of ferocity. Greenskins from thousands of light years away are hearkening to the call of the warg, and more arrive daily. Despite this success, Garzfall's visions lead him off-world. It slowly dawns on the prophet of Gork and Mork that this battle is but one of many. The next stage of his grand plan is made clear: he must kindle the spirit of warg Garzfall elsewhere in the galaxy. With a small fleet, headed by his capital ship Kilrekka, Garzfall leaves the Armageddon sector. In the 852nd part of the 999-year galactic green wave, so many orcs gather upon the world of Octaria, migrating from all over towards the siren call of warg Garzfall, that they overpower Garzfall's Mad Boys mob with the overflow of psychic energies. In turn, the power-drunk Mad Boys vomit forth a great green wave of force that ripples outwards to the far ends of the galaxy and back. This phenomenon registers with every warp-sensitive soul in the Imperium, echoing in the immaterium and sending shivers of fear through all who recognize its significance. The largest warg scene in over 8,000 standard years of the Imperium's history is getting bigger. Now that it is growing from different points in the galaxy, it is attracting orcs from an unbelievably wide range of territories. Orc culture. From pirate enclaves to system-spanning orc empires, orc holdings are as varied as they are steeped in violence. When they invade a planet or a star system, Greenskins bring with them a belligerent ecosystem that overwhelms each conquered world as surely as the orcs themselves crush its defenders. Greenskins' society and ecology is so robust that it can exist almost anywhere, which is why the settlements have been fan-scattered to the furthest corners of the galaxy. The Imperium has encountered orcs and the kind living, even prospering, in such extreme environments as toxic death worlds, newborn planets still heaving with volcanic activity, or the depressurized carcasses of abandoned orbital platforms. Orc hordes have been found inhabiting drifting ice floes or infesting irradiated asteroid fields perilously close to active stars. They have been discovered amid corrosive chemical swamps, on lightless nightmare worlds seething with horrific predators, even in the bombed-out remains of planets subjected to exterminators. It is rumored amid the Imperium's rogue traders that there are even orc enclaves hidden within the Eye of Terror itself, though most dismiss this as the ravings of madmen. No matter where they are encountered or in what numbers, the Greenskins are a deadly threat that will multiply exponentially if left unchecked. In a matter of solar weeks, what began as a small raiding party can swell, as if by some arcane alchemy, into a roiling, anarchic horde bent upon war and destruction. The other starfaring species of the galaxy have many theories regarding how the orcs' numbers increase so quickly. These range from spontaneous physical division to the release of wind-blown spores after death. The notorious Van der Meist theorem even claims that the Greenskins inhabit an alternative pocket of reality and simply fall through, fully formed, wherever others of their kind are already at war. While many of these wild suggestions are patently ridiculous, it is certainly the case that where one orc is encountered, more will never be far away. When combined with their relentlessly warlike nature and tendency to grow larger and more powerful with every battle they survive, it is easy to see how rampaging orcs can quickly overwhelm a planet's defenses. A ragged band of orcs allowed to escape the wreckage of the spacecraft and disappear into an imperial city's underhive will return within solar weeks as a horde of murderous savages, sweeping all before them in their desire for conquest. Those they do not kill will be enslaved, and that which they do not destroy will be looted. Before long, another world will be conquered by the orcs, its cities reduced to ruins and its populace toiling in chains as slaves for the brutal Greenskin overlords. Those who have studied orc settlements and survived have observed that orc civilization is hierarchical in the extreme. The life of a Greenskin is determined not by rank or birth, but by size and savagery. The largest orcs push around the smaller brethren, who in turn bully the diminutive slave race known as the Gretchen into doing the bidding. Smaller still are the snotlings, tiny and simple-minded creatures with little use beyond fungus tending or fetching and carrying. The orcoid subraces have a symbiotic relationship of sorts. The smaller Greenskins perform menial tasks for their orc overseers in exchange for a measure of protection. The orc language literally has no word for diplomacy. They solve almost all of the disputes by fighting. Indeed, many other intelligent species believe that violence itself is a language amongst the orcs, since they use pain and brutality to get the points across to each other. Orcs are not very intelligent or clever, and they even label the use of strategy and fleeing from battle as simply un-orky. Orc social hierarchy. The orc way of life is as straightforward and brutal as the orcs themselves. Much like their approach to everything else, orcs do not waste time pondering why they do things, or how they might do them better. Instead, they simply act, instinct and ability driving them on in a never-ending cycle of violence and conquest. Orcs have their own distinct culture, or kultur, as the orcs call it, the origins of which are lost in the dim and distant past. Though likely a corruption of whatever may have come before, by and large, it functions very well. Perhaps this is because the fundamental tenet of the society is a simple one that even the most pea-brained snotling can understand: might makes right. Orcs instinctively obey those larger than themselves, provided they're a healthy shade of green. Most orcs would rather die than bow to a non-Greenskin's will. The rulers of orc society are the most powerful orcs of all, known as war bosses or warlords. These monstrous killing machines can reach up to 10 feet in height, and their sheer muscular bulk makes them wider at the shoulder than a fully armored space marine. Though some war bosses rise to prominence through low cunning, most seize power through the application of brute force. A war boss will hold dominion over all he surveys and beat the living daylights out of anyone who says different. His decisions are enforced by a ruling caste of orcs known as nobs, who are larger, richer and more aggressive than normal orcs, and never miss an opportunity to remind them of it. The bulk of an orc horde, which can be hundreds or even thousands strong, is comprised of great mobs of infantry that call themselves boys. Goth clan mobs, in particular, are famous for the sheer number of boys that they can field at war, often outnumbering their foes several times over. Orcs tend to be lazy and forgetful, and only war and the preparations beforehand really bring out their innate talents. Though the bigger, meaner orc boys will lord it over the smaller, ganglier ones, even a subservient orc is of limited use when it comes to practical tasks that do not involve fighting. Most of the day-to-day running of Orc society is therefore left to the Gretchen, whose duties include preparing food, taking messages, hauling stuff about, general organization, and just being around the place when an Orc wants something to kick. This gives the Orcs plenty of time to swagger about, getting into fights and coming up with new ways to kill things. The Gretchen are happy enough in their role. They bear little resentment towards the superiors, for to them Orcs are just a fact of life. Questioning this usually leads to a clip round the ear and not much else. Individual Gretchen can enjoy a relatively comfortable existence by providing valuable services to their Orc masters. In fact, the Gretchen have created an entire enterprise culture of their own within their Orc-dominated society. A many Gretchen operates their own black market businesses on the side, selling fungus beer, roasting squigs on sticks, coordinating the bets when a fight breaks out, and then looting the resulting corpses. Clans and tribes. Quote, each of their clans has their own particular thing. See, Da Evil Sons is fast and loves da trucks, Da Death Skulls is a bunch of filchers, Bad Moons is snobby and flash, Da Blood Axes is a pack of filthy umi lovers, and Da Snakebites is jo weird. Uskoffs is da biggest and da greenest and da meanest UV course. That's what makes this da best bosses. End of quote from Galthaza, Goth Ardboy. An Orc clan is a massive group of Orcs who share an enduring philosophical viewpoint on Greenskin life. The great thinker Archimedes once postulated that thinkin' is for gits, but everyone is a git, so's ya might as well think like some other gits, which has come, through the years, to mean the clans. Each clan is not really a true community, as each is scattered throughout the galaxy and comprises many disparate tribes. But they represent the rock upon which all Orcs build the foundation of their existence. While Orc tribes are constantly changing, groups of Greenskins breaking apart and reforming, clan ties are more stable and enduring. Orc clans are the philosophical delineations representing the various aspects of Orcish character. Each clan has its own colors, markings, defining characteristics, and ways of waging war. It is possible that an Orc's clan affiliation may, in part, be a genetic phenomenon, as members of the same clan may have physical characteristics in common that distinguish them from members of other clans. For instance, Bad Moons are identifiable by the faster growth rate of the teeth. An Orc tribe usually contains Orcs from many different clans, so when tribes fight each other, Orcs will often find themselves in combat with foes from the same clan. This is considered normal, as an individual Orc's allegiance is to his war boss rather than his clan. Despite this, inter-clan rivalry is intense in most Orc tribes. The Orcs are an incredibly anarchic race. Their armies and settlements seem utterly disorganized to outside eyes. Yet in truth, Orc society is governed by a rugged set of tried and tested traditions that no Greenskin would ever consider changing. Orcs thrive on conflict. The strongest rise to the top while the weak become subservient and benefit from the superior leadership and head-kicking skills of the conquerors. To an Orc, this state of affairs is perfectly satisfactory. If an Orc tribe is beaten by another, stronger tribe, the defeated Orcs welcome the opportunity to be led into battle by a new warlord of even greater power. A tribe is simply all the Orcs in a given location, regardless of what cult or clan they may belong to, because in the end an Orc is an Orc and they will always put aside the differences if there is an opportunity to attack a common foe. Each tribe is led by a warlord whose authority and power holds this loose confederation in check and prevents civil war between the rival elements of the tribe. Tribes can vary in size from a few hundred Orcs to a few million, depending on the influence of the war leader at the top of the pile. Because a warlord cannot be everywhere at once, the tribes are split into war bands that in turn are led by factional leaders called war bosses. Each war boss leads a war band of 100 or so Orcs, forming a rough and ready army that is capable of taking on almost any foe. Most war bands have a hardcore of orc boy infantry at their heart, but beyond this they vary enormously from one to the next. Like-minded orcs tend to cluster together, leading to war bands crammed with mechanized speed freaks or pyromaniac burner boys. The war boss preferences can also dictate how their war band looks and fights, some favoring masses of charging boys and hulking nobs, while others prefer to ride to battle aboard columns of ragged armored vehicles, or packing batteries of massive shooters and artillery. Although all orcs belong to a tribe, most also belong to clans such as the Goths or Evil Sons. Tribes are constantly breaking apart and reforming in the crucible of battle, but the clans are constant and enduring. A large tribe usually contains many different clans, and each clan has its own distinct character and identity. While it has been stated in many sources that there are a great many different orc clans, there are only 6 that are truly widespread and found in almost every orc tribe in the galaxy: the Bad Moons, the Blood Axes, the Death Skulls, the Evil Sons, the Goths, and the Snakebites. Most war bands or tribes will contain representatives of at least one of these clans, each of which has distinct cultural preferences, traits and strengths. Bad Moons. The Bad Moons are the richest orcs around because their teeth grow faster than anyone else's. This is not regarded as an unfair advantage, as any orc big and nasty enough can simply smash the teeth out of a Bad Moon's head. The Bad Moons essentially fulfill the role of a merchant caste in what passes for orc society and have a reputation for showing off. They are always continuously buying, selling, swapping, and conning to get teeth. The highest ranking amongst them wear garishly decorated war banners on the backs, and the richest openly flaunt their wealth by wearing necklaces of teeth. They trade with other orcs to get the biggest guns, the flashiest war gear, and the best food, but are not as concerned with close combat as other orcs. They have been noted to have a greater proportion of weird boys in their ranks than other clans, who use their wealth to dress flamboyantly. Unfortunately for them, they end up being dragged off to battle and used against the enemy like any other weapon. The signature mob of the Bad Moons are the Flashkids, orcs with devastating custom shooters who have a taste for the best war gear and clothing. For instance, Captain Badruck, the infamous orc freebooter, is a Bad Moon and was kicked out of the clan for having too many teeth for his own good. Bad Moons love gold more than any other metal, and will commonly sport a couple of glinting teeth in their avaricious grins. They favor strikingly patterned golden, yellow and black for their war gear. Their armor and war gear is painted with gaudy patterns in the clan colors, and they have more jewelry and piercings than any other clan. The Bad Moons clan take a snarling moon on a field of flames as the clan's sigil. Blood Axes. The Blood Axes were the first orcs to encounter the Imperium of Man. They have picked up many human tactics, such as using camouflage, although it may seem a bit too brightly colored to a human's eye, and retreating when they are losing. Indeed, when they do retreat, Blood Axes will in fact return with larger numbers. They trade with humans for war gear and vehicles, and have even worked as mercenaries for the Imperium at times, such as during the massacre at Big Tooth River. All of these things lead followers of other clans to brand them as dangerously treacherous, cowardly, and downright un-orky. Most Blood Axes are backstabbing commandos, essentially serving as orc special operations troops. Blood Axes wear combat fatigues and forage caps in shades of green and drab colors, commonly in camouflage patterns. This betrays the influence of imperial military style, as do the other personal adornments commonly worn by orcs of this clan. The Blood Axes bear the clan motif of crossed bloodied axes. Death Skulls. The Death Skulls are looters and plunderers who grab whatever they can from corpses on the battlefield, although they are not above acquiring things from other orcs who are not watching. They collect anything that might be useful, as well as grisly trophies and various lucky trinkets and charms. They are superstitious even for orcs, and often paint themselves in their wargear blue, which orcs feel is a lucky color to protect themselves from harm. It is not uncommon to find looted Imperial vehicles in Death Skull armies, such as chimeras and rhinos. When dealing with the Death Skulls, many other Orc clans will often find a few of their vehicles missing as well, and then suspiciously similar ones reappearing painted blue amid the ranks of the Death Skulls vehicle pool. The symbol of the Death Skulls is the horn skull. They also use skulls, other intelligent races' teeth as luck charms, and have more Gretchen than most Orc tribes, as they are used to scout for valuables. Evil Sons. The Evil Sons are an Orc clan who are dedicated to speed and making as loud a noise as possible when in combat. Just as the Goths clan loves violence and aggression, so the Evil Sons love speed. The Evil Sons have adopted the general Orc maxim that red UNS go faster as a clan motto. Evil Sons prize fast vehicles like Orc war bikes, war buggies, and trucks on which the boys can ride to battle. To assist their highly mobile war bands, the Evil Sons possess a larger population than normal of mech boys to keep those vehicles tuned and running. By far the largest number of Orc speed freaks come from the Evil Sons clan. An Orc's love of speed can easily affect his brain, to the point where an Orc becomes addicted to the thrill of a wild ride into battle. Beyond even a speed freak's delirium, there are also flyboys, whose need for speed has driven them into the air in search of ever greater thrills, piloting the Orcs' fighters and fighter bombers. Members of this clan wear at least one item of red clothing at all times, which makes their appearance quite distinctive. Red is a hard color for Orcs to come by, as few of their regular enemies have red uniforms to loot and rip up, and most red dye is used for red paint. The use of red face paint is another expression of this clan's obsession with the color red. Once again, they resort to the use of blood when the red paint runs out. Evil Sons are distinguished by the use of bright colors, especially red and yellow. They like flame patterns and many sport goggles and driving gloves, whether they're driving a vehicle or not. The Evil Sons are also found as an Orc tribe of the same name on the Warhammer world of Warhammer Fantasy. Goths. The Goths are the toughest and most brutal Orcs to be found in the galaxy, roughly equivalent to a late Warhammer Fantasy Black Orcs. The Goths are the biggest, meanest, and most brutish of all the kind, and that's saying something since they're Orcs. Of all the Orc clans, the Goths are the most inspired by the thrill and thunder of battle. Goths will take any excuse to start a brawl, even amongst themselves. As a result, the Goths are specialists in hand-to-hand combat who prefer the battles up close and personal. They are particularly fond of the stick bomb because these Orc grenades are held by hand and are good for close combat in trenches, ruins, bunkers, and rathales. Goths usually carry a brace of hefty stick bombs stuffed down the blackjack boots. Goth armies are notorious for the sheer number of Orc infantry they muster in times of war. A mob of Goth boys is usually at least 20 strong, and a true Goth horde has 100 times that number at its heart. When the Goths go to war, the ground shakes to the incessant thump of thousands of steel-capped boots. The Goths boast the greatest numbers of nobs and storm boys amongst any of the Greenskin clans. This is because the Goths are the most militaristic of all the Orcs. All Orcs love war and combat and wage war as a way of life, but of the Goths it can truly be said that they live only for war. Goths dress mostly in black with some white checks for relief, as they see bright colors as being un-Orky. The symbol is the black bull's head, and Goth nobs almost always wears big horns on their helmets. Garsfall Thracker is a member of the Goth clan. Snakebites. The Snakebites prefer ancient Orky tradition to advanced technology, shunning things like force fields and armored vehicles in favor of protecting themselves with war paint and riding into battle on huge boars wielding spears and choppers. Depending on how fundamentalist their anti-technology beliefs are, the snakebites may choose to remain as feral orcs even after their civilization possesses the technical knowledge required to advance to an industrial state. Orcs of this clan are covered in swirling red tattoos, like coiled snakes. They are also known to cultivate hair squigs so they can decorate themselves with extravagant crests and top knots. Other common features are wolf skin headgear and wolf pelts, which add to their wild and primitive appearance. One of this clan's most distinctive elements of dress is the snake belts, which are fastened with metal buckles in the form of a snake. The totem of this clan is the venomous serpent. This clan's whelps are toughened by allowing venomous snakes to bite them, hence the name snakebites given to them by the other clans, which they adopted for their own. Freebooters. Orc freebooters are not in themselves a clan but notorious pirates and thieves, plying the void in smoking, sparking void ships with the intent of causing as much mayhem and destruction as possible. They prey upon anyone foolish enough to stray into their hunting grounds, screaming out of the dark on plumes of fire to blast apart the foes. When an enemy vessel is crippled or foolishly tries to surrender, the freebooters will smash their way on board, killing anything that moves and stealing anything that doesn't. The freebooters will then haul the booty back to their hidden bases and count their ill-gotten gains. When a war boss wants to invade a planet, he calls on fleets of freebooters to see off enemy ships and clear the way for the orcs to get down to the surface. For this service, freebooters claim exorbitant scavenging rights as well as a fortune in teeth, and a war boss has little choice but to pay up if he wants their help, as freebooters that don't get the price often simply vanish into the void in search of more loot. Even if a freebooter's terms are met, he might still get distracted by better prospects, the lure of easy plunder enough to sway most captains. Whether they fight alongside a WAAOGH or tear around the void raiding planets and stealing ships, freebooters often becomes disgustingly rich, leading many to become flash gits. Orc freebooters are by no means always flash gits, but all flash gits eventually end up as freebooters. Arrogant and boorish, a nob who fancies himself a flash git will normally alienate himself in short order from the rest of his tribe. Whether because of his grating self-aggrandizement, eating the local Big Mac's favorite grot oiler without permission, or committing the cardinal sin of strutting about with a bigger, shinier shooter than the war boss, a flashgit will normally find himself ejected from his tribe. When a whole band of nobs get ideas above the place in the order of things within the tribe all at once, it can lead to bloody infighting. This will usually end up with the departure, at gunpoint or otherwise, of a whole mob of newly freebooten flashgits. However they find their way into this new situation, flashgit mobs will quickly take to the freebooter life. Fighting as mercenaries allow successful gits to accumulate vast sums of wealth in a short space of time. Even better, they can gleefully spend it all on themselves without a war boss around to take his cut. With chief galore flowing into the coffers, successful mobs of flashgits will soon be riding through the void in their very own kill cruiser while wielding the kind of firearms that Deathskull's looters can only dream of stealing. They bedeck themselves with natty finery, and even the grot minions get stuffed into gold button frock coats and brag loudly of their master's wealth. Flashgits also sport profusions of piercings, furs, glyph plates, brightly colored pirate garb and extravagant hats. All of this showy nonsense does absolutely nothing though to hide the hulking, muscular bulk and bestial lethality of the flashgits themselves. Odd boys. If orcs were just single-minded killing machines, they would be dangerous enough, but they would be unable to sustain the level of technology required to ply the stars. Gretchen, though obedient if beaten with sufficient regularity, are not inventive enough to maintain the advanced weaponry that the orcs possess, nor to patch up casualties when the going gets tough. These highly technical demands are met by a caste of orcs known as odd boys. Although it may seem strange to humans, these odd boys all possess an innate understanding of their fields of expertise without having to be taught. A mech boy knows how to create engines and plasma generators even though he has never been taught to do so, and a pain boy instinctively knows which squirty tube connects to which wriggly bit when he is delving into some unfortunate patient's abdomen. If asked where this knowledge comes from, an odd boy might reply that it was in his blood all along. It seems possible that the abilities of orcs to build machines, practice medicine, or even use psychic powers are passed down through orc society on a primordial, biological level. No imperial studies of the Greenskins have ever successfully determined how this process works. Yet it seems most likely that the knowledge is genetically hardwired into the very cellular makeup of the orcs, perhaps a legacy left to them by the legendary Brain Boys. However, he comes by his latent knowledge. As an orc matures, it will start to make itself apparent, leading him to assume the role in orc society for which he is best suited. Should he lack any genetic specialist knowledge, the orc will happily join the vast throng of boys at the heart of each tribe and content himself with a life of murder and mayhem. A list of the most common odd boys found within orc society. Docs, pain boys, known also as mad docs or docs, are responsible for fixing injuries even the highly regenerative orc physiology cannot repair, such as severed limbs and brain damage. They use stabby bits as their medical tools. An orc will only go to a pain boy when he has no other choice, as these odd boys are infamous for trying out experimental procedures, such as the greatly feared squig brain transplant, on patients while they are under anesthesia, known as a concussion, to other intelligent races. Pain boys are responsible for attaching crude bionics to orc patients that have been created by the mech boys, although sometimes they are not paying attention and replace the wrong part of the patient's body. This is often distressing to a patient who is the lucky recipient of an exploding leg, especially if it was his arm that needed attention. High-ranking pain boys are called pain bosses and are known to be accompanied by cyborg bodyguards. Orcs are surprisingly resilient and have had arms, legs and even head swapped around, and the orc in question has survived to tell the tale. The herders are odd boys who are skilled trappers and caretakers of squigs. Common amongst clans of wild boys, herders are not seen much on the battlefield in orc warbands past the feral stage, as the uses are mostly rendered obsolete by the advent of vehicles. The mad boys are those orcs whose minds did not develop quite right, or who have taken a chunk of shrapnel to the brain. Though they are physically identical to other orcs, the fact that they wear outlandish garb and carry everything from rusty buckets to stuffed squigs into battle proves that they are very different in all sorts of entertaining ways. Mad boys often form informal retinues for weird boys, and live apart from other orcs in small shanty towns. Mobs of mad boys are considered to be lucky, their presence a sign of good fortune. However, this does entail a degree of inconvenience, such as when they decide to hold impromptu shouting contests in the middle of a night raid or pelt the foe with a volley of stick bomb pins before waiting expectantly for the loud bangs to start. The fact remains that mad boys are a surprisingly potent asset on the battlefield, for their antics often confound the foe. Even the most gifted tactician cannot predict the anarchic movements of a mob of mad boys caught up in the excitement of battle. After all, how can you second-guess an enemy who is as likely to tear apart an infantry platoon with the bare hands as they are to mill about picking snot grubs out of each other's noses? The mech boys, known also as a mechaniac, or simply as a mech, is a type of odd boy who serves as one of the engineers who build all the weapons, vehicles, and other advanced technology used by the Greenskins. Mech boys are especially important to orc speed freaks, as they maintain the prodigious amount of bikes and vehicles used by orc warbands. The most important and skilled mech boys are known as big mechs, who lead groups of lesser mech boys armed with a wide variety of Greenskin custom equipment and combi weapons, sometimes including even full warbands or whole WAAOGHs. Armed with a large amount of less than conventional orc weaponry. A big mech's mastery of technology is unsurpassed amongst the orcoid races, and a big mech is often seen generating a custom force field around himself that protects his person and his creations. A big mech who becomes the leader of a Greenskin WAAOGH will be known as a mech boss. Important mechs are known as big mechs, who lead groups of lesser mechs armed with all variety of custom equipment and combi weapons. Wild boys. Though the majority of orcs will never venture far from the tribe, there are those strange few who are driven to explore, compelled to do so even in preference to fighting. Such pioneers will seek out the deepest jungles on most arid deserts, where most creatures would struggle to survive at all. Should they endure and multiply, it is common for these remote orc tribes to degenerate into savages, sometimes known as wild boys. After a time, some of these groups will seek out and return to their parent warband. There they learn about orc culture and take the place in the warrior society, exchanging spear and axe for slugger and chopper. However, should the new tribe emerge on a world where their orc ancestors have been driven off or slain, the wild boys will instead develop into a tribe of feral orcs. At first, feral orc tribes pose little threat to the planet they infest. They are uncivilized, even by the low standards of their orc brethren, and live by the old ways of hunting and exploring. As the tribe increases in size, they breed ever larger varieties of squig, riding around upon great tusked beasts that vary in size from that of a horse to that of a baneblade. Through constant conflict and strife with one another, eventually, the wild boy enclave will mature into a fully fledged and technologically capable orc warband in its own right, only to spawn wandering wild boys of its own. Pigdocs. This unique class of odd boy are an odd combination of a doc and mech, although not as skilled as either individually. They are often found in feral orc tribes, tending the war boars that are ridden to battle by the primitives. The main use in battle is to provide doping, to increase the ferocity of the various beasts that feral orcs take to war, as well as some of the orcs themselves. Runthards, also known as slavers, is an odd boy who has the patience to take care of his clan or warbands Gretchen and snotlings. The characteristic weapons are whips, grabber sticks and grot prods. They are often seen leading Gretchen mobs into the fray or ordering around the Gretchen crews of big guns. They often make use of squig hounds to eat errant or fleeing grots in battle to increase the morale of the Gretchen mob. They can also own slaves from every intelligent race in the galaxy except the Necrons. The speed freaks are those orcs who become addicted to the sensation of speed. These speed-obsessed Greenskins band together in their own mobs and warbands, which are full of buggies, bikes, and trucks. They belong to what orc culture refers to as the cult of speed and become members of the speed freaks. These grinning loons roar into battle on exhaust-belching jalopies and crude but effective flying machines, intent on getting into the thick of the fighting before the ground-pounding comrades. Most vehicles used by speed freaks are painted red as, according to orc superstition, the red ones go faster. Due to a large number of vehicles in each warband, they often have several of the odd boys known as mechs amongst the number to keep the vehicles running. Sometimes a warband of speed freaks is even led by a big mech instead of a warboss. The weird boys are the orc psychers. One major difference between them and the psychers of other intelligent races is that weird boys draw on the power of the Wug instead of the power of the Warp, a dangerous realm full of demons, from which the other intelligent races' psychers draw the powers. However, the warg has its own perils for orc weird boys. If they soak up too much of this power, their heads explode, causing a powerful psychic backlash that can cause other orcs' heads to explode as well. Naturally, weird boys avoids combat as much as possible, but the ability to gout green flame capable of melting armor and shoot bolts of lightning is too great for most war bosses to resist, and they get dragged into combat anyway. Some weird boys actually become addicted to the power and seek out battles. These exceptionally dangerous individuals are known as warpheads. Other odd boys include some boys, orc teeth bankers, yellers, orc priests of Gork and Mork, and bro boys, cooks, all of whom have an important support role in so-called orc culture, although not on the battlefield. The end of part 1. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this audiobook, leave a comment and like. Visit my Facebook, Blogspot or Patreon. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.